Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. We're back with another YouTube video, and it's an old one, but we're gonna revamp it and redo it until it's better. So let's begin. Saera Targaryen was born in 67 AC, and she was the daughter of King Jaehaerys I and his sister wife, the Queen Alysanne. She was the ninth born of 13 children, her siblings in order being Aegon, Daenerys, Saem and Ballon, Alyssa Maegelle, Rhaegar and Elia, Saera Targaryen, Valerion and Gale. She was one of the 9 children who lived to adulthood. And it was said that Princess Serra came into the world red-faced and squalling, and she was described as a troublesome child and a challenge from the very start. She was demanding, tempestuous, and disobedient. The first word she spoke was no, and she said it often and loudly. She refused to be weaned past the age of 4. Serra was fierce, stubborn, and willful, but most of all thrived upon attention, and was most wroth when it wasn't given to her. "Seven save us," Alysanne whispered to the king one night. "When I look at her, I see Llyrio." She was told to have a voracious hunger for milk, for food, for affection, for praise, for anything within her grasp that she could reach. When she was a babe, she didn't so much cry as scream, and it's said that her ear-piercing wails became the terror for every maid in the Red Keep. "She wants what she wants, and she wants it now," Grand Maester Elisar wrote of the princess in 69 AC when she was only 2 years old. Though Septim Barth had a more objective analysis of Saera at age 12 and her behavior. "She's the king's daughter and well aware of it. Servants see to her every need, though not always as quickly as she might like. Great lords and handsome knights show her every courtesy. The ladies of the court defer to her. Girls of her own age vie with one another to be her friends. All of this Serra takes as her due. If she were the king's firstborn, or better still, his only child, she would be well content. Instead, she finds herself the 9th born, with 6 living siblings who are older than her and even more adored. Aemon is to be king. Ballon most likely will be his hand. Alyssa may be all her mother is and more. Aegon is more learned than she is. Maegelle is holier. And Dela? When does a day go by that Dela is not in need of any comfort? And while she is being soothed, Serra is being ignored. Such a fierce little thing she is, they say. She has no need of comfort. They are wrong in that, I fear. All men need comfort. Saera Targaryen had once been thought to be wild and willful, given to acts of disobedience, but Princess Serra's girlhood made Llyrio seem a model of decorum by comparison. A betrothal between her and her brother Aegon was briefly considered but ultimately thrown aside. Septim Barth records that Serra might not have been able to discern the line between wanton mischief and malice because she was so young, but she crossed it often and did so freely. Dela, even though older, was a victim of Serra's cruelty, and once Serra had filled Dela's chamber pot with bees, and she was forever sneaking cats into Dela's bedchamber knowing she was terrified of them. And before Serra was 11, she was stealing wine, and by 12, she was like as not to show up drunk when summoned to the sept for prayer. And honestly, I feel like this is like middle child syndrome. The king's half-witted fool, Tom Turnip, was subject to Serra's more crueler acts of mischief. Serra had once told Tom Turnip before a great feast that it'd be funnier if he performed naked, which was not well received. And more morbidly, Serra told Tom that if he climbed the steps of the Iron Throne, he could be king. Tom Turnip was clumsy at the best of times and prone to tremors. Serra knew this. The throne sliced his arms and legs to pieces. "She is an evil child," her septa said of her afterwards. She'd had more than half a dozen septas and as many bedmaids before turning 13, and she was said to be bright, as clever as the bookish Aegon in her own way, and certainly pretty, taller than her sister Dela, who I think stood at 4'7", and not half so delicate. As strong and quick and spirited as her sister Alyssa, it was hard to resist her when she was charming. Aemon and Ballon never failed to be amused by their sister's mischief, but they never knew the worst of it. She'd mastered the art of getting anything she wanted from her father Jaehaerys, whether it be a kitten, hound, a pony, a hawk, or a horse, but Jaehaerys drew the line at the elephant. Alysanne wasn't quite as gullible, and Serra couldn't fool her as easily. Septim Barth tells us that all of her sisters misliked her to various degrees. And instead of being shy as Dela had been, maidenhood became Serra, and she took to the men of the court and they to her. At 14, she told the king she meant to marry the Prince of Dorne, or perhaps the king beyond the wall, so she could be a queen, like mother. That year a trader from the Summer Isles came to court. Far from shrieking at the sight of him, Serra said she might like to marry him too. Serra formed a group of her favorite lords, knights, and ladies, and they became her partners in mischief. These included the Lord of Griffin's Roost, Redroy Connington, the heir to Maidenpool, Jonah Mooton, and a knight called Stinger. Perry and Moore, nicknamed Pretty Perry, and Alice Turnberry, nicknamed Sweetberry, became Serra's dearest friends, and all of them became inseparable for more than a year, to be seen together at every feast and tourney and event in between. Jaehaerys was pleased he wouldn't have to scourge the kingdoms for a suitable match for Serra when such lords were at hand. Queen Alysanne remained unconvinced. Serra is clever, but not wise, she told the king. Lady Perrien and Lady Alice were pretty, vapid, empty-headed little fools from what she'd seen of them, whilst Connington and Mooton were callow boys, and I do not like this Stinger. I've heard he sired a bastard in the Reach and another here in King's Landing. On a spring night in 84 AC, screams from a brothel called the Blue Pearl drew the attention of 2 guards in the city watch. The screams came from the fool Tom Turnip, who was lurching helplessly in circles trying to get away from half a dozen naked whores. The patrons of the house laughed, and among these patrons were Redroy Connington, Jonah Mooton, and Stinger. They thought it funny to see old Turnip do the deed, Redroy admitted. Jonah Mooton laughed and said it all been Serra's notion, that clever girl. After the matter was brought to the king and they'd sobered up, they didn't mention Serra once. He sent the boys to the dungeons. Perhaps they'd tell the true tale in the morning. Alysanne went to talk to Perrien and Alice, knowing how close they were to the boys. The girls talked, and Queen Alysanne knew how to listen without saying a word. Ironically, none of the girls knew anything about the ordeal with Tom Turnip, but they knew a great deal of other things. Why shouldn't we train at kissing? That's what girls do, isn't it? Alice Turnberry agreed. Kissing was sweet, she said, and one night we started kissing with our clothes off, and that was scary but exciting. We took turns pretending we were boys. We never meant to be wicked. We were only playing. Then Serra dared me to kiss a real boy, and I dared Perry to do the same, and both of us dared Serra, but she would do us one better. She would kiss a man grown, a knight. That's how it began with Redroy and Jonah and Stinger. Lady Perrien jumped back in then to say that afterward, it was Stinger who'd done the training for all of them. He has 2 bastards, she whispered. Alice Turnberry then threw a fit, tearing at her dressing gown and saying she was so sorry, she never meant to be bad, but Stinger forced her, and Serra called her a craven, but now she was pregnant and she didn't know who the father was. Alysanne told them that all they could do was sleep for now. Serra was brought to the throne room the next day. Serra crumbled when she knew her parents wouldn't trust her games any longer. She went from denial to dismissal to quibbling to contrition to accusation to justification to defiance in the space of an hour, with stops at giggling and weeping along the way, Septon Barth would write. She never did it. They were lying. It never happened. How could they believe that? It was just a game, just a jape. Who said that? That was not how it happened. Everyone likes kissing. Perry started it. It was such fun. No one was hurt. No one ever told her kissing was bad. Sweetberry adored her. She was so ashamed. Ballon used to kiss Alyssa all the time. Once she started, she didn't know how to stop. She was afraid of Stinger. The mother above had forgiven her. All the girls were doing it. The first time she was drunk, she never wanted to. It was what Mem wanted. Miguel said the gods forgave all sins. Jonah said he loved her. The gods had made her pretty. It was not her fault. She would be good from now on. And on it went. Septon Barth said that the girl took his breath away. There was never a mummer in the land who gave such a performance. Serra had given away her maidenhead to all 3 boys, Stinger, Redroy, and Jonah. No, I gave it to all 3. They all think they were the first. Boys are such silly fools. The line was drawn for Jaehaerys when she said that she could marry all of them, like Maegor, who'd had 6 or 8 wives, according to Serra. Alysanne tried to soften Jaehaerys by telling him that Serra was still their child, even though he said she wasn't anymore repeatedly. He softened for a little while under the guise of his lovely queen. But then Serra tried to escape, going to the dragon pit to claim a dragon, and Jaehaerys hardened to stone yet again. And Alysanne knew that he would not soften again. Well, Serra was sent over to the faith when she was 16 years old. It was meant to be a lesson, according to Septon Barth. A few years of prayer would send her back on the road of redemption. Perhaps if Serra had known, she wouldn't have done what she did next. She endured having her head shaved, the rough-spun robes, the meatless meals, and she submitted to the cane for over 1.5 years. But when her escape opportunity arose, she took it and fled, knocking over an older sister who came upon her during her escape. They searched all over Old Town for her, but she was nowhere to be found. And 1 year later, she was spotted in a Lycian pleasure garden, still clad as a novice. Queen Alysanne wept to hear it. "They've made our daughter into a whore," she said. "She always was," the king replied. It's believed that Illyrio's wife, Serra, rumored mother of Young Griff, if you believe that he isn't the real Aegon, son of Rhaegar and Elia Martell, was a descendant of Saera's. I mean, if we're going by names, it does sound similar. Serra sired many bastards, and 3 even came to stake their claim to the Iron Throne during the Great Council, and one was even said to be the spitting image of his grandsire in his youth. And Serra was in her early 30s, but she showed no interest in staking her claim, stating that she had a kingdom in Volantis all of her own. Targaryen blood in the free cities could very well have led to Serra or other descendants that we may be introduced to. Some actually speculate that Varys is a descendant of Serra's or the Blackfires. And I'm actually personally sure that Serra's lineage will come back to haunt us in some way or another in the winds of winter or a dream of spring or, whenever George decides is an apt moment to drop the books. Well, here we have the references I used if you want to check it out yourself. I haven't used references in my later videos, but that's just because I'm lazy and you guys have to take my word for it. It's fun to have that power, isn't it? No, I'm just joking. But yeah, here's the references, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and put on post notifications. Have a nice day. Bye.